Welcome back to the deep dive. So our listener, the learner, has done something,
Yeah.
well, truly ambitious this week.
Ambitious is the word.
Yeah, they didn't just send us a stack of articles, they sent us an entire library. I mean, a whole integrated system of sources.
It's incredible.
Talking cognitive psychology, the architecture of the self, critical thinking, modern inertia.
Yeah.
It's quite literally a blueprint for, navigating the early 21st century.
It really is. And I think what makes it so useful is that it hits on this central anxiety of modern life, right? That feeling of being overwhelmed and surface level and a little disempowered.
Exactly.
So the mission today really is to pull out the core operating system for life right now. How do you cultivate depth? How do you reclaim your own agency and find authentic meaning when the whole world seems designed to reward speed and noise?
Okay, let's just jump right into that because you hit on the fundamental tension here that runs through all these sources.
Right.
This conflict between depth and surface. The document kicks off with this really fantastic fandom metaphor to explain what depth actually requires. It starts with what it calls level 1, the hook.
Right, the hook. It's that accessible entry point, the thing that grabs you instantly.
Like a movie trailer.
Exactly. A great movie trailer or the catchy chorus of a pop song. Or, in conversation, it's just basic small talk. It's familiar, it's comfortable, and it requires zero long-term commitment. It's the doorway.
And it's designed to be easy to open. But the hook is it's a tiny sliver of what's actually there. And what's behind that door is what the source calls the iceberg.
Yes. True depth is everything below the surface, all the complex, integrated stuff that takes real effort, real commitment to understand.
It's the nuance, the internal logic.
The history, the connections between ideas that aren't obvious at first. And it requires patience. It requires a willingness to feel a little bit stupid at the beginning.
And this is where the emotional stakes really get raised, isn't it? Because when you move past that hook and you invest in the iceberg, you become so connected to it. But then, if you try to share that deep love, that complex knowledge, with someone who's only interested in the hook, the sources say you create an asymmetry.
And that asymmetry is the source of so much frustration. And loneliness, actually.
Yeah, you're trying to transmit a 90% iceberg experience to someone who just wants the 10% tip.
They're just not invested. And you feel like you're doing all the emotional labor, right? To bridge the gap, to simplify, to translate your passion back down to their level of curiosity.
And what builds up quietly is this resentment or just exhaustion.
That's the feeling, that feeling of always meeting others where they are, but never ever feeling met in return. It's an emotional imbalance, and it's rooted in just different levels of investment.
And the sources they are completely blunt about the cultural context that just makes this 100 times worse.
Yeah.
Our digital culture, the endless scrolling, the notifications, it's literally built to reward breadth over depth.
Speed over substance. Every time. Deep, slow engagement is just. It's inconvenient for a system that's built on constant novelty and quick clicks.
As soon as something requires more than, 3 seconds of focus?
You're trained to discard it and move on to the next easy hook. And this has led to what the sources called the fracturing of fandom. So instead of diving deep into one thing, becoming an expert, we skim across hundreds of things.
We become surface-level generalists in everything.
Exactly.
Which makes perfect sense. And we start to feel that tension, that invisible stress of having to be competent in this huge number of disconnected areas. And that brings us, I think, really smoothly into our first big section, understanding the cognitive landscape that creates this whole pressure cooker.
We have to acknowledge the sheer psychological cost of modern life. The sources call it the invisible weight.
The invisible weight. I like that.
It's this background hum of stress, the feeling that you're constantly walking on thin ice because you're juggling these immense conflicting demands that are always just about to break through.
And it's not just the amount of information, right? It's the emotional texture of it. The sources make this fascinating point that our memory isn't just like neutral storage.
No, it's deeply tied to expectation and morality.
Morality. Okay, break that down.
It's a crucial insight. We feel obligated to know things, not just for practical reasons, but for social or moral ones.
Okay.
Take that specific example from the text. The "you don't know this song" guilt trip.
I feel that.
We all do. It's a small memory lapse, a failure of cultural literacy, but it's treated almost like a moral failing, like you've broken some unstated social contract.
Yeah, you feel that little spike of shame. It's the same pressure when someone brings up, a trending topic you should know about, and you just don't. It's a performance standard, and you feel judged if you fail it.
Exactly. And that feeling gets magnified, exponentially when it comes to what the sources call functional ignorance.
Functional ignorance. So, like, not knowing how to file your taxes or what a 401k is.
Or the terms of your health insurance, or basic car maintenance. Society treats these knowledge gaps as a character flaw, not a skill gap, a character flaw.
And the internal monologue is just brutal. It's, am I failing at being an adult?
Yes. You internalize the shame, you believe that everyone else just magically figured out mortgages and APRs, and your ignorance is proof that you're just fundamentally less capable.
But the reality is that knowledge is situational.
Yeah.
You learn it when you absolutely have to, usually through some stressful trial and error.
But the shame feels existential, and it just adds constantly to that invisible weight.
And all of this guilt, all this pressure, it runs headfirst into our finite cognitive bandwidth. We literally cannot keep all these plates spinning forever.
No. The sources cite research on cognitive load, and it's clear. We have a finite daily budget of cognitive and emotional resources.
And it's surprisingly small.
Very small. The research suggests that most people can actively manage only 4 to 7 major life domains at any one time.
Wow, only 4 to 7. I mean, if I list mine right now, work, family, health, household stuff, finances, social life, trying to learn new skills, I'm already at 7 or 8.
Exactly. And if you're juggling 8, then 3 or 4 of them are being neglected. They're underperforming, or they're just running on fumes, on inertia. Your brain is acting as a triage unit.
So it's not a character flaw if I feel like I'm dropping the ball.
Not at all. It's almost certainly a consequence of essential bandwidth triage. Your brain is just making choices about what's not on fire right now.
This whole analysis it completely challenges that ideal of perfect balance that we're all sold.
Oh, completely.
That neat little pie chart where you dedicate exactly 12.5% of your energy to 8 categories. It's clean, it's symmetrical, and it is.
Completely unrealistic. It's the ideal of a spreadsheet brain. A much healthier approach is what the sources call dynamic balance.
Dynamic balance.
Yeah, think of one of those mobiles hanging from the ceiling. It's never perfectly still. It sways, it shifts, it moves with the breezes of life, but the goal is just that no one part gets so heavy it brings the whole system crashing down.
So it's resilient, not static.
Yeah.
Stability through constant adjustment. That sounds exhausting, but also very honest.
It is honest. And the second approach they offer is weighted prioritization.
Okay.
This is where you consciously choose a strategic imbalance for a particular season of your life. You decide, okay, for the next 3 months while I launch this project, work gets 35% of my attention, family gets 25%, and everything else is just on minimum maintenance.
But hold on, I have to challenge that a little. Isn't that just a fancy way of saying I'm going to neglect my health until this work crisis is over? How do we make that strategic instead of just, self-destructive?
That is the crucial distinction. It's only strategic if 2 conditions are met. 1, the imbalance is temporary and it has a defined end date. And 2, you've calculated the minimum energy required to keep the neglected domains from completely collapsing.
So if health is down to 5%, that 5% has to be non-negotiable sleep and basic nutrition, not peak performance.
Exactly. The moment that imbalance becomes indefinite, it stops being a strategy and it just becomes burnout.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So that brings us from the invisible weight of all these demands to the second major challenge in this section, what the sources call the quiet tyranny of comfort.
The engine of modern inertia.
Yes.
Inertia in this context is this paradox where the modern world removes all the necessary friction from our lives. And in doing so, it makes reflection harder. Friction is the effort that naturally slows us down. It forces us to engage, to think, and to choose.
And we've seen this erosion of friction everywhere. The sources have great examples. Cooking from scratch versus ordering delivery.
Figuring out a route versus blindly following GPS.
Or having a complex, messy conversation versus just firing off a knee-jerk reaction on social media.
Right. Friction provides these natural pauses that we need for reflection. When everything is optimized for immediate ease, those spaces for internal processing they disappear. We lose the moments where we would naturally ask, is this the best choice for me?
And this fosters a kind of psychological inertia. Comfort makes it terrifyingly easy to stay stuck in situations that are actively making you unhappy.
That's the deepest paradox. You stay in a job you dislike because the routine is predictable, the commute is automatic, and the thought of updating your resume, networking, facing uncertainty, it's just too emotionally taxing.
The path of predictable misery has been smoothed over so efficiently that the path toward happiness looks inconveniently bumpy.
It's not laziness, it's a fear of friction, backed up by the comfort of the known. It's a self-reinforcing loop.
So the antidote has to be
Wait,
intentionally adding friction back into our lives.
that's it. Breaking the loop of meaningless motion by creating conscious pauses.
How do we do that practically?
The sources suggest things like why rituals, just specific times to pause and ask, why am I doing this? Is this aligned with my values? Or something as simple as single tasking.
Just focusing on making one cup of tea.
Exactly, or reading one paragraph without checking your phone. You force a moment of presence, of intentionality. It's about making movement feel meaningful again, not just automatic.
It's a radical act against a system built on ease. But I see how that reorientation, that conscious choice, it's impossible until we understand what's driving the decisions inside of us. Which brings us to the internal architecture of the self.
Right, so we move from the overwhelming external world to the incredibly rich and complex internal one. The source material introduces this idea that we aren't a single unified self. We're more like a collection of internal facets or subpersonalities.
The council within.
The council within. And just recognizing this multiplicity is the first step towards self-mastery. We have these different internal voices that act as distinct lenses to process experience. It's like an internal board of advisors, and they all have different priorities.
And within that council, the most powerful and often the most contradictory voice is the ego, which the sources personify as Liz.
We have to spend some time with Liz, because understanding her is understanding so much of what drives both our ambition and our insecurity.
The descriptions of Liz are just. They're incredible. She's Prive, of course, but she's described as a queen in exile, ruling in silence.
A wolf in pearls.
A wolf in pearls, and
Right.
a burning church, sacred and destructive at the same time.
And that dual nature is the whole key. Liz
Yeah.
is the driver of intentional confidence. She pushes for excellence. She forces you to achieve status. She insists on being seen. She's the fire that makes things happen.
As another subpersonality, Val, who is ambition, admits, Liz is the why.
Right. Liz provides the reason for the struggle.
But Liz's self-interest, I mean, that must create massive internal conflict, doesn't it? She sees vulnerability as weakness. She sees the efforts of the other parts of you as adorable, but ultimately just tools for her.
Precisely. Liz has this great line, ambition grinds, but I glean. Val does all the exhausting work, but Liz takes the credit, gets the glory. And when it comes to integrity, another subpersonality named Devin, Liz says, integrity is noble, sure, but power bends compasses.
So she prioritizes self-preservation and status over any kind of rigid moral code.
She does.
So the takeaway here is critical. The ego isn't an enemy you have to destroy. You need that fire. But it's a powerful partner that you have to understand and integrate. How do you keep Liz in check without suffocating the drive she gives you?
You integrate her. You recognize that Liz needs Val ambition to actually climb and get things done. Otherwise, Liz just floats off into daydreams about success without doing any of the work. It's a constant dance. Pride versus purpose. Mastery comes from knowing which voice is speaking and making sure it's aligned with your highest values, not just your deepest insecurities.
Okay, so let's talk about the impossible standard that this internal council is trying to manage, the unrealistic human blueprint. The sources use this perfect analogy here, Dungeons and Dragons statistics.
It's a great analogy because the mismatch is so stark. Modern life demands high scores in all the internal stats. Intelligence, wisdom, charisma, constitution, and they have to be optimized for constant, abstract multitasking.
You have to be smart enough for tax law, wise enough for emotional relationships, charismatic enough for networking.
And have the constitution to handle chronic stress and sleep deprivation. But our brains evolved for practical contextual learning, for hunting, building, storytelling. We evolved for situated action, not abstract multitasking across 15 different apps.
We're trying to run the wrong software on the hardware.
Exactly. And that mismatch creates inevitable failure and chronic insecurity.
Which leads directly to psychological defense mechanisms. The sources highlight two key ones that keep our insecurity going and fuel what they call confidence theater.
The first is the illusion of transparency. This is where we just grossly overestimate how much other people can see our internal anxieties and self-doubt.
So if I walk into a meeting feeling totally unprepared, I'm convinced my boss can see the anxiety just radiating off me.
Like heat. Even if your outward composure is perfect, You feel exposed, so you overcompensate. The second mechanism is pluralistic ignorance.
Right. This is when you mistakenly believe you're the only one who doesn't get it, because everyone else is acting like they do.
I always picture that silent Zoom meeting where a complex idea is shared, everyone is nodding, but inside we're all thinking, what on earth is happening?
But since no one else asks the question, we assume we're the only one who's lost.
And so we engage in confidence theater to avoid looking slow, and then that insecurity often projects outward as judgmentalism. Being critical of others is often just a subconscious attempt to boost our own sense of security. It's a vicious cycle.
And that makes the need to actively reclaim and structure this fractured self
Yeah.
absolutely critical. The sources offer 6 foundational areas that act as personal levers for change.
Right. These 6 levers are attention, trust, authenticity, belonging, agency, and narrative. And tending to these intentionally is how we build islands of coherence in the middle of all the chaos.
Let's focus on a few of the practices. Start with attention. How do we reclaim it?
Attention is our most valuable finite resource. The practice is intentional single tasking and building barriers against the noise. If you're learning, close all the other tabs. If you're talking to someone, put the phone away. Attention is something to be guarded and directed. It's the currency of creation.
And what about authenticity? How do we stop performing and start being present?
The practice is shifting from performing to presence. You have to ask yourself over and over, am I performing right now or am I truly present? Authenticity is just alignment. It's minimizing the gap between your inner self, the counsel within, and your outer expression.
Okay. And belonging. In a world of, conditional online communities, how do we find real connection?
You have to actively seek out or create what the sources call micro-communities, small groups, online or off, where you can genuinely be your whole self, imperfections included. The question to ask is, where can I show up today without feeling the need to either shrink myself down or shout to be heard?
And finally, agency. When the world feels too big, the problem's too complex, how do we fight that paralysis?
By intentionally shrinking the frame. We have to stop trying to carry the weight of the entire world and focus on what is genuinely mine to carry today.
Which you can do through simple, tactile acts.
Exactly. Building something, gardening, reorganizing a single drawer, or taking a long walk. These physical acts are powerful reminders that you can shape your immediate world, even if you can't solve global poverty.
It's a localized, daily reclamation of agency.
These levers aren't about fixing the world. They're about building a resilient internal architecture. And once that foundation is solid, we can move on to the next step, getting the right tools to navigate all the external information, which is section 3.
Okay, we're shifting now from self-knowledge to applied knowledge, and we have to start with a crucial distinction, the difference between knowledge and wisdom.
Right. We know the words, but the sources give them a really powerful distinction. Knowledge is having the map. You've got the facts, the data, the historical context.
But wisdom.
Wisdom is knowing which route to take and when to walk off the path entirely. And maybe when the map itself is biased or just outdated. Wisdom is metabolized knowledge. It's not just the facts, but knowing how to combine them, understanding the context, and applying them ethically.
And there's that irony again. The truly intelligent, the ones with the most knowledge, they so often doubt themselves, while the uninformed often speak with the most conviction.
It's a function of awareness, really, a hint of the Dunning-Kruger effect. The more you know, the more you become aware of the vastness of what you don't know, which naturally leads to humility.
So the goal isn't just to feel smart, it's to feel whole, aligned.
Exactly. And to get that clarity, we need a reliable framework. The sources present what they call the cognitive compass.
The cognitive compass.
It's a shortcut to clearer thinking. It's about triangulating complex issues through 3 distinct lenses to build robust beliefs that have actually been tested.
Okay, lens 1 is sociology and psychology.
Right. This focuses on human behavior, emotions, social consensus, cultural truth, the stories we tell, the incentives we build. It asks, what is the human motivation here?
Lens 2.
Science.
The classic empirical approach, observable, measurable, testable, falsifiable. This lens asks, what can be proven with data, regardless of how we feel about it?
And lens 3 is abstract philosophy. This gets into the why questions, meaning ethics, internal consistency. It asks, is this idea coherent? Does it align with an ethical worldview?
And the most reliable truths usually lie in that small area where all three of these frameworks overlap.
Can you give us a concrete example, like, say, regulating social media algorithms?
Perfect example. Okay, so if you look at it just through the science lens, you might analyze data transmission rates, optimization metrics, how fast the algorithm pushes content.
Right.
If you look at it through the sociology, psychology lens, you analyze the group polarization it causes, the rise in anxiety, the addiction patterns it creates. This tells you how it's affecting people. And then the philosophy lens comes in and asks, even if it's profitable and engaging, is a system designed to maximize emotional outrage fundamentally coherent with a good society? Does it align with an ethical framework of truth and goodwill?
Exactly. Each lens gives you a different, non-negotiable piece of the truth. You can't understand the issue without all three. And that holistic approach leads right into the difference between critical thinking and conspiracy thinking.
The trap with conspiracy theories is their simplicity, isn't it? They offer these neat little narratives, good guys, bad guys, a secret plan.
They're compelling because they impose clarity on a blurry, complex world. They prioritize doubt, which is a good start, but they lack a rigorous method. And this is the core insight from the sources. Conspiracy theories often explain malice where there may simply be incompetence, staggering complexity, or pure coincidence.
It's emotionally easier to believe a secret cabal controls everything than to accept that complex systems fail randomly or because of human error.
Whereas critical thinking, by contrast, embraces discomfort. It requires humility. You have to be willing to be wrong, and it demands that you hold paradoxes without needing an instant, simple answer.
It demands patience.
It does. And that robustness also extends to how we receive and transmit information. We have to spend some time on persuasion through that classic framework of ethos, pathos, and logos.
Because we have to face how we're actually wired. We're not logic processors first. We're social, story-driven creatures.
We rely so heavily on trust ethos and emotion pathos that we often just bypass logic logos because of the sheer cognitive load required to evaluate every argument logically.
Which is where ethical responsibility comes in. Persuasion is a powerful tool.
But its use comes with a moral responsibility. Ethical persuasion is fundamentally different from manipulation.
Okay, let's break that down. Let's start with ethos or trust. What's ethical versus manipulative?
Ethical ethos is earned trust. It's based on genuine expertise, proven character, reliability. Think a doctor or a historian. Unethical ethos is deception using fake credentials, or assuming faked authority like some anonymous online account pretending to have inside knowledge.
Okay. Now pathos, emotion.
Ethical pathos connects through genuine empathy. It inspires positive emotions, hope, courage, shared excitement. Unethical pathos manipulates base emotions, fear, hatred, tribal resentment, specifically to bypass critical thinking and trigger an immediate, destructive reaction.
It's leveraging the ego.
100%.
And what about logos, logic? You'd think that's always ethical.
Now, not always. Ethical logos presents reasoning clearly, honestly, and it accounts for counter-evidence. Unethical logos cherry-picks data. It uses flawed reasoning to justify a conclusion that was already arrived at emotionally. It's not about finding truth, it's about winning.
This responsibility is paramount when we get into difficult conversations, and the source material draws a sharp, necessary line between ethics and morality.
Morality is emotional, it's tribal, it's tied to identity, and it's often non-negotiable within a group. Ethics, on the other hand, is rational, analytical. It seeks universal principles that can cross cultural divides. It asks, if X is wrong for me, is it also wrong for others in a similar situation?
So to navigate complexity, we need to apply ethical, principle-based reasoning while understanding the deep emotional roots of morality. And the sources give us this brilliant, practical, 5-step engagement pathway for these dialogues.
Step 1 is foundational. Self-reflection. Before you even start, you have to ask yourself honestly, why am I entering this conversation? Is my goal to understand, or is it to prove I'm right? Or, deep down, is it to punish them or make myself feel superior?
Naming your own hidden goals.
It helps you approach with genuine curiosity. Step 2, lead with listening. You have to prioritize understanding over being understood. Use open-ended questions like, tell me more about how you came to believe that.
Step 3, mirror then challenge.
Yes. First, you get them to agree that you understand their position. If I'm hearing you right, you believe X because of Y. Is that correct? Once they say yes, and only then, you can introduce a different perspective, framing it as a different lens, not a direct attack.
That phrasing is so important. It protects them from feeling defensive.
It does, which leads to step 4. Differentiate the person from the belief. You have to separate their identity and intrinsic worth from the specific idea they hold. You protect their dignity. You can critique the idea, I find that logic inconsistent because of Z, but you never attack their character.
And if they react with bad faith attacks, you know the conversation's over.
Exactly. Which is step 5. Know your boundaries. It is okay to draw a line. Not every conversation needs a resolution. Sometimes walking away is the healthiest choice. This whole framework moves the engagement from a battleground to a space of mutual, if uncomfortable, exploration.
It's all about high-integrity action. Which brings us to our final section, redefining personal value. All right, shifting gears, let's talk about how we define our own value in a world of increasing shortcuts. I'm looking at you, AI. The source material wrestles with what it calls the paradox of effort.
The core tension here is story versus shortcut. For centuries, the long hours, the grind, that's what built meaning. That struggle became part of the identity narrative that validated the achievement.
And shortcuts threaten that whole worldview.
They really do. If an AI can write a brilliant report in 30 seconds that took a human 5 days, the human identity that was built on the story of that 5-day struggle feels completely devalued.
So they might get defensive, protect the narrative that justifies their past struggle.
And it raises that uncomfortable existential question,
Right.
Was the struggle optional all along? So the sources propose that true, virtuous, smart work, the kind that retains its value, has to be guided by ethics and context and compassion, not just speed.
How do we anchor ourselves in that meaning when the market only seems to reward efficiency?
The anchor questions are vital here because they force Liz the ego back into check. You have to ask, would I be truly proud of this work if no one else ever saw it? And, critically, is this helping me become the kind of person I want to be?
So work becomes valuable not just for its outcome, but for the character it builds in the process.
Exactly. And that focus on process leads right into the concept of active engagement, contrasting passive learning with active production.
Right, so passive consumption, listening to us right now, reading books, it's necessary input. But the sources make this compelling case that creation doesn't just embed knowledge better.
It nurtures our well-being, and it cultivates a genuinely more intelligent, more integrated self.
It transforms us from receptors into agents, a radical reclaiming of agency.
Absolutely. The act of doing, of creating, it forces you to synthesize and apply what you've consumed. This is why tools like the Feynman technique are so powerful.
Where you force yourself to explain a complex concept simply.
As if to a child. And it immediately highlights all the gaps in your own understanding. It links back to Bloom's taxonomy, which puts creating at the very highest level of cognitive skill. You move from remembering to understanding to applying and finally to creating something new.
It's a shift from asking, what do I need to consume, to what valuable thing do I want to make and offer the world?
Creation changes your brain state. Consumption just fills its storage.
Okay, next, we have to tackle this really common, insidious modern habit. The dislike reflex, that instant automatic filter of, I don't like that.
It's a mental trapdoor. It's an efficient but incredibly costly verdict. In a world of overwhelming choice, this phrase just becomes a default filtering habit so we can cope.
It's like an internal security guard that just yells, too complicated, get rid of it. It strips away all the nuance.
And the sources are really clear about the costs of relying on this reflex.
What are they?
First, opportunity blindness. You miss out because you filter out anything novel or challenging. Second, lowered resilience, because you haven't built up any tolerance for non-harmful friction. And third, identity rigidity.
Defining yourself by what you avoid rather than what you pursue.
And that comfort comes at the cost of growth.
I find myself doing this constantly. With new music, unfamiliar foods, I just immediately retreat to what I know.
The antidote is intentionality. You have to audit your dislikes. Separate the real harm or necessary boundaries like this is physically or emotionally unsafe from low-stakes preference or just habit. Practice strategic openness.
A willingness to lean into non-harmful friction for growth, just for the length of one new song.
Exactly. And finally, let's connect all this back to time. We need to reframe wasting time as a conscious, purposeful choice, especially in a future where AI might make traditional productivity
Well,
meaningless.
if human value is shifting away from purely economic output, then our definition of valuable time has to shift too.
Value is no longer just measured by metrics. It becomes emotional and relational, tied to connection, presence, authenticity.
So wasting time becomes totally subjective. The question shifts from, is this time productive, to,
does this time feel alive to me? If that time restores you or inspires you or connects you to someone or just aligns with your internal compass, then it has served a vital purpose.
the distinction is whether the time is wasted because it's numbing avoidance, like doom scrolling, or if it's restorative rest, creative wandering, presence.
Exactly. True wisdom is learning to dance with that tension and redefine the win as alignment and self-discovery, not just relentless efficiency.
We've covered so much ground today. This deep dive has mapped the chaotic external pressures, that invisible weight of demands, and the quiet tyranny of comfort, and then drilled right down into our internal architecture, meeting Liz the ego and learning to pull those 6 levers of agency.
And we equipped ourselves with the external tools for navigation, the cognitive compass for clearer thinking, and that 5-step pathway for high-integrity, ethical engagement.
The path to depth isn't about avoiding complexity. It's about mastering both the internal landscape of the self and the external tools of inquiry.
And the final call to action from these sources is so clear. True wisdom isn't about being perfectly right. It's about being willing to see more.
In a world with infinite options for distraction, the real scarcity isn't money or time. It's our attention and our genuine openness.
Which leads us back to the power of that final provocative thought building on the dislike reflex. That comfortable refusal, that I don't like that reflex. When it's left unchecked, it shifts from being a necessary protective boundary into becoming a comfortable, self-built cage.
The learner's mission, and yours, is to rigorously recognize the difference between protecting yourself from genuine harm and protecting yourself from the friction that is necessary for growth. Because, as the sources suggest, working true to your values, your vision, and your own evolution, that matters most.
So keep exploring your own internal landscape, keep questioning your assumptions, and keep building those islands of coherence in the chaos of modern life.
Until next time, keep diving deep.